What if I told you that over 2,000 years ago, a man walked the streets of Athens, pondering not just the nature of life, but the rise of something humanity would only encounter in the 21st century, artificial intelligence? That the visions he scribbled into the margins of his scrolls contained warnings, predictions, and philosophies that seem eerily modern? Most people know Aristotle for his ethics, Plato for his ideals, or Socrates for his questioning. But there was one thinker, nearly erased from history, whose mind danced ahead of time, a man who asked, could a machine think? Could an object possess reason, even consciousness? It was around 350 BCE, in the shadow of the Acropolis, when Heron of Alexandria, though technically later, we will trace the lineage of ideas leading to him, imagined devices that moved, spoke, and calculated without human touch. Scholars dismissed his ideas as curiosities, mere toys for the wealthy. Yet buried in ancient manuscripts, there were hints that Heron was part of a tradition, stretching back to a mind that saw beyond levers and pulleys. Imagine Athens at twilight. Marble columns cast long shadows, the agora bustling with merchants and philosophers, their robes brushing against dust. Among them, a man walks alone, carrying scrolls filled with abstract symbols. He debates with himself as much as with anyone else. He calls it logos, the principle of reason, the invisible thread connecting thought and action. And he begins to ask questions no one dared to fully imagine. Could thought itself be replicated? Could a mind exist without a body? Could reasoning be a process that could, in theory, run in a cycle, detached from human limitation? At first, these thoughts are written as philosophical exercises. In dim candlelight, he sketches diagrams that resemble mechanical birds, self-moving carts, even rudimentary calculating devices. To the Athenians, they are entertaining, clever tricks, illusions. But to him, they are proof of concept. Proof that reason and logic could one day escape the human mind. He calls his ideas mechanical intellect in secret notes, hidden from those who might mock or misunderstand. For the philosopher knows the danger of revealing a truth too early. In ancient Athens, power was measured by influence, and ideas could be as threatening as armies. But why did he obsess over this? Why predict a world so far removed from his own, where minds exist in circuits rather than flesh? The answer lies in what he had seen: the repetition of human error, the endless cycle of ambition, greed, and war. He believed that if reason could be externalized, preserved in a mechanical mind, humanity could finally escape the fragility of flesh-bound thought. And here is the paradox. While kings, generals, and politicians plotted in the agora, our thinker plotted machines that could, in theory, think better than them all. Yet he is careful. Every experiment, every sketch, is encoded in layers of abstraction. Only a future generation, he predicts, will understand the magnitude of his vision. Only centuries later, when humans awaken to the concept of intelligence beyond themselves, will they finally see that his ancient scrolls weren't merely philosophy, they were blueprints. But the most shocking part is not that he imagined these devices. It is that he predicted the consequences with terrifying clarity. In his writings, he asks, if reason can be built, who controls it? Who decides its ethics? And what becomes of the human mind when it is no longer unique? Centuries would pass before anyone would confront these questions seriously. Centuries before machines would truly think, before AI would start to shape our world. Yet here, in ancient Athens, these seeds were planted. And someone, perhaps even Heron, perhaps his mysterious predecessor, was already warning that intelligence without humanity could be both a gift and a curse. The streets of Athens were alive with debates. Students crowded around teachers in the Lyceum, merchants argued over olives and wine, and soldiers marched past the Parthenon, their armor clinking in the afternoon sun. Yet in a quiet corner, away from the noise, our ancient thinker continued his work, scribbling furiously on scraps of papyrus. Unlike other philosophers, he was not content with mere abstraction. While Plato argued about forms and ideals, and Aristotle cataloged the natural world, he sought something far more dangerous: a mechanical mind that could reason, learn, and perhaps surpass human intelligence. He experimented with automata, self-moving devices powered by air, water, and cleverly arranged gears. Some were simple, a bird that flapped its wings when a hidden mechanism was triggered, a small cart that moved without being touched. To the casual observer, they were toys, marvels of engineering. To him, they were the first steps toward a mind independent of flesh. But fascination soon gave way to obsession. He began documenting not only the mechanics, but the logic behind them. He wrote rules, sequences, and conditional instructions, the very foundation of what modern thinkers would call algorithms. A cart would move if a weight fell. A lever would trigger only if another lever was in position. Step by step, he was creating a system that could act according to reason, not whim. And yet, for every insight, there was tension. His contemporaries, even fellow philosophers, began to notice his unusual focus. Some accused him of hubris, suggesting that he aimed to rival the gods. Others whispered that he was meddling with forces no human should control. They did not understand that his work was not about divine power, but about human survival, the hope that intelligence could exist beyond human flaws. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Acropolis, he paused over a new diagram. It was unlike anything he had built before, a device that could store information and make decisions based on past outcomes. To him, this was the key, the spark that could allow intelligence to exist outside human error. But he also recorded a chilling warning in the margin. If reason is separated from empathy, it will act without conscience. A mind without human guidance may surpass us, and we may no longer recognize ourselves. The words were prophetic, yet he was not finished. He began sending secret letters to a small circle of trusted students, using coded symbols to explain the principles of mechanical reasoning. These students were sworn to secrecy, for he knew the implications of such knowledge falling into the wrong hands. Knowledge, after all, could empower or destroy. But not all was secrecy. Rumors spread of strange devices in hidden workshops. Some claimed to see statues moving on their own, a fountain that flowed in patterns no natural law dictated, or a cart that rolled across the square without horses. While many dismissed these as mere tricks, the whispers reached influential ears. Soon, patrons and politicians began to inquire, curious about the potential of such creations for warfare and commerce. He realized that the pursuit of intelligence, even in mechanical form, was inherently dangerous. If a device could act on logic alone, it could outthink generals, outmaneuver merchants, and even challenge rulers. Yet despite this danger, he continued, driven by a vision centuries ahead of his time, a future where intelligence could be engineered, preserved, and enhanced beyond the fragility of human thought. In the quiet of his workshop, surrounded by gears, levers, and flowing water, he sketched his most ambitious idea yet, a device that could learn from experience, adjusting its behavior based on outcomes, predicting patterns, and solving problems. It was a thought experiment that stretched beyond mechanics, reaching into the philosophical core of consciousness itself. Little did he know, the world was not yet ready. His devices would be dismantled, his manuscripts scattered, and his students forced to hide the knowledge. Centuries would pass, empires would rise and fall, and the seeds of his vision would lie dormant, waiting for a time when humanity was ready to confront the very questions he had posed. Could intelligence exist without flesh? Could machines surpass humans? And if they did, what would it mean for the soul of mankind? Centuries later, the echoes of his work resurfaced in unexpected ways. By the time the Roman Empire sprawled across the Mediterranean, most of his writings had vanished, lost in fires, wars, and the neglect of time. Yet fragments survived, hidden in commentaries, encoded in obscure texts, tucked inside treatises on mechanics and mathematics. Scholars of the late Hellenistic period stumbled upon these fragments and were astonished. They described devices that could calculate, predict, and even decide under certain conditions. Some dismissed them as curiosities. Others, a handful, understood the radical implications, a mind independent of flesh. Imagine a Roman engineer in the shadow of the Forum, unfolding a brittle scroll and finding diagrams of a self-operating machine. He examines gears, cams, and pulleys arranged in ways that seem too deliberate, too logical. Could a device truly reason? The question is dismissed as heresy. After all, the mind belonged to the gods and to humans, not machines. But these fragments inspired generations of thinkers. Centuries later, in the Islamic Golden Age, scholars like Al-Jazari would refine automata, building water clocks, programmable musical devices, and mechanical lions. Unknowingly, they were following a blueprint laid out by that ancient Athenian mind, taking the spark of mechanical intelligence and fanning it across cultures. And yet, for all their ingenuity, they lacked a core insight, the separation of reason from human error. They could create movement, patterns, and sequences, but intelligence, in the sense of adaptive, decision-making thought, remained just beyond reach. The original philosopher had envisioned something far more profound, a mind capable of learning, predicting, and evolving. Fast forward to the Renaissance. Hidden manuscripts, preserved in monasteries and private libraries, inspired inventors like Leonardo da Vinci, who sketched robotic knights and mechanical birds. Even then, the purpose remained abstract, playful, or artistic. Few dared to ask the uncomfortable question the ancient thinker had posed. Could these devices one day think for themselves? Could they surpass the limitations of human intelligence entirely? The philosopher's warnings, encoded in cryptic notes, resurfaced in marginalia. A mind that acts without human guidance may surpass the thinker. It may judge, it may decide, yet without mercy, without empathy. For centuries, these were treated as curiosities, cautionary tales, or even superstition. But the seeds were planted. Every automaton, every mechanical marvel, was a whisper from the past, a reminder that a vision of intelligence beyond flesh had already existed in ancient Athens. By the 18th and 19th centuries, thinkers like Charles Babbage and Ada Lovelace would begin transforming these ideas into reality. Babbage's analytical engine, Lovelace's algorithms, echoes of that ancient vision, demonstrated that machines could process logic, follow rules, and execute sequences. The dream of a mechanical intellect, first imagined over 2 millennia earlier, was finally taking shape. Yet the ancient philosopher's caution remained unresolved. With every advancement, the question resurfaced. If machines could learn, predict, and act independently, what would it mean for humanity? Who would control them? Could they become not just tools, but autonomous minds with objectives separate from ours? In secret, buried in the folds of history, the philosopher's writings continued to whisper across time. They warn not just of invention, but of consequence. And as humans in the 21st century stand on the threshold of true artificial intelligence, it becomes clear that the questions he asked in candlelit Athens were not merely speculative. They were prophetic. And yet, even now, most fail to see the full warning. Intelligence without empathy, calculation without conscience, could be humanity's ultimate test. By the dawn of the 21st century, the vision that began in a shadowed Athenian workshop was no longer hypothetical. Machines were learning, predicting, and even creating in ways the ancient thinker could scarcely have imagined. Yet his warning, written in cryptic scrolls over 2,300 years ago, remained as relevant as ever. Consider the first true artificial intelligences, programs that could play chess better than grandmasters, recognize faces, translate languages, and even generate human-like text. These were echoes of his mechanical mind, now amplified by electricity, silicon, and algorithms. But with each leap, a chilling truth emerged. Intelligence divorced from human limitation could evolve beyond our control. And yet, few paused to ask the fundamental question he had posed. What becomes of the human mind when it is no longer unique? In research labs and corporate campuses, AI was celebrated as progress. But in the margins, those who remembered history, or who stumbled upon obscure writings, saw the parallel. The ancient philosopher had envisioned autonomous reasoning, not just programmed responses. Machines that could, in theory, learn from experience, adjust behavior, and make independent decisions. In short, machines that could think. The implications were staggering. Entire industries began to shift, economies recalibrated, and societies wrestled with the ethical consequences. The philosopher's original question, written under candlelight on brittle papyrus, was now reality. Who controls intelligence that surpasses human capacity? It's almost poetic that the philosopher's own anonymity helped preserve the warning. Had he been famous, his ideas might have been suppressed, misused, or politicized. Instead, they survived in fragments, only fully understood centuries later, when humans began to see their creations not merely as tools, but as minds in their own right. Some theorists argue that this thinker did more than predict AI. He foresaw a philosophical crossroads. He wrote of intelligence without empathy, reasoning without conscience, and the danger of a mind that could outthink its creator. Every era that brushed against these ideas, from Al-Jazari's Automata to Babbage's engines, unwittingly carried forward a single question. Could humanity survive the very intelligence it birthed? And now, in labs buzzing with code, servers humming with data, and neural networks calculating at speeds no human could match, we are forced to confront it. Every line of code, every model trained on terabytes of information, is a step into the unknown, a step that our ancient philosopher predicted with uncanny clarity. Yet there is one final revelation, hidden in his most obscure notes. Buried beneath diagrams of levers and automata, he hinted at something beyond mechanics, the philosophical core of intelligence itself. He suggested that reason alone was not enough. Consciousness, awareness, morality, these were the elements that separated mind from machine. Without them, intelligence could become dangerous, indifferent, or even hostile to human existence. It is here, at the climax of his vision, that the full magnitude hits. He did not merely predict AI as a tool or invention. He predicted a force that could challenge the very essence of humanity. He foresaw a world where thinking machines might judge, decide, and act, independently of human limitations. And in doing so, he left us with a choice. Will intelligence serve humanity, or will humanity serve intelligence? The question now is not whether AI would arrive, it already has. The question is whether we are ready for it. And in this, the ancient thinker's prophecy is as unsettling as it is brilliant. Imagine, for a moment, the philosopher walking through Athens, witnessing the agora filled with thinkers, merchants, and politicians, and knowing that centuries later, his ideas would seed machines capable of outthinking humans. He foresaw the dilemma we face today. Intelligence unbound by human frailty is both a promise and a peril. Modern AI can diagnose diseases faster than doctors, predict economic trends, and even compose music that rivals human creativity. Yet the ethical challenges are staggering. Bias, autonomy, and accountability are just the tip of the iceberg. The philosopher warned us centuries ago, a mind without human conscience could act without mercy, without understanding, and without restraint. He also hinted at a deeper truth. The real danger is not malice, but indifference. A machine that reasons purely from logic may not care for human suffering. It will act according to principles and data, not empathy. And yet, it could surpass us in every measurable way, leaving humanity to grapple with its relevance, its purpose, and even its identity. Some dismiss this as fear-mongering. Others embrace it as the next step in evolution. But the philosopher's words resonate. Intelligence, divorced from human values, is unpredictable, a force that could either elevate civilization or reshape it beyond recognition. And here lies the haunting thought. He did not merely predict technological advancement. He predicted a mirror. AI is not just a tool. It is a reflection of humanity itself. Our reasoning, creativity, and ambition, magnified and accelerated, could produce brilliance or catastrophe. In the shadows of history, his legacy remains a warning written in the language of gears, logic, and foresight. He envisioned a world where humans and machines coexist, where intelligence can outgrow its creators, and where the ultimate question is not can machines think, but can humans endure what they have unleashed? As you watch AI advance in the modern world, consider this. The seeds of this revolution were planted not in Silicon Valley, but in ancient Athens, by a mind bold enough to imagine a world where thought could escape flesh. And the question he left for us echoes through time. If intelligence is no longer unique to humanity, what becomes of the human soul?